One. All right, everybody, welcome back to From the Mechanics Bench. This is part 2 of the very first episode with Andrew Baker. We did about 38 minutes a couple days ago, just talking about our stories, where we got started riding, how we became two kids from Edmonton that I've been able to kind of turn mountain bikes into most aspects of our lives across the board. So he's joining me from his shop, his garage shop in North Vancouver. I'm obviously sitting in my shop in Kamloops District Bicycle Company. And where we left off last time was we had kind of you had already moved to, well, not moved, you had ended up in North Van, driving over there. Car broke down, screw that, leave it where it lies, get your shit, get to Kamloops, or get to North Van, stay there. I came and joined you a couple months later.
I was actually thinking about that timeline. It was like almost 8 months.
Yeah, it would have been a while because you left in the summer and I moved out there in January.
Yeah, I moved out. So, well, I don't even call it moved out here. I just got displaced out here.
Yeah, exactly.
Like mid-spring, early spring kind of thing, and then I jumped back and forth a little bit. But yeah, it was pretty much game on out here at that point.
Yeah, and then so the other crazy tie it all together, you ended up living at Katie's house. So Katie,
well, when I first got out here, I had nowhere to live, obviously. So I knew Danger Stan, obviously. Yep. And then I knew Grant Laird and a few others that I had met through the Flow show and stuff like that. And had no idea like what people thought of the Flow show. Actually, when I first moved out here, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It was, everyone expected you to be able to rip, and I had no idea how to ride trails. All I could do was do one-offs and jumps. I ended up living in Danger's basement there for a while, and then we did a summer tour and yada yada, and then fall came around, and I was living at Katie's place, with Grant, because he was already her roommate, Grant Laird over at 4 Bikes.
Yeah, I was just talking to him, so I got him coming up for episode 5, which we're going to name just episode 69 in his honor. But yeah. But the funny thing that's crazy about that story is you lived with Katie, and that's like when I first moved out there, you were living in. I stayed on I just showed up on Katie's couch one day for a couple of days while we scouted for a place. And now Katie, who I worked with at John Henry Bikes, is now my business partner here at District Bikes in Kamloops. So that's another crazy little connection on how it all.
A big old together. Circle of
of
crazy
everything.
Little tight knit community that it is.
Totally. And then, so bringing back to like what your journey, you had ended up here, you were living at Katie's. We then obviously got a place in Lynn Valley, which was sick. Yeah. You were at that point were working construction kind of, right?
So when I was living at Katie's, she basically said to me, she's like, "Hey, you owe me rent in 2 weeks. Do you got any money?" And I was like, yeah, I'll figure something out. She was like, "Okay, well, I'm working for this company, Maypro Construction.
Right.
If you want a job, come down and talk to the boss. He'll hire you." And I was like, "Okay, how do I get there?" And like, fully had to like, oh, this sucks. Now I got to get a real job. And thanks, Katie. Rode my bike down to their office off Dollarton there, and boss hired me right away, gave me a job, which was super sick, set me up, and Dave Gilmore, what a legend of a boss, and he got me into carpentry. He was the guy that got me into carpentry,
which is sick because that's still what you're doing now, which is
still what I'm doing. Like able to like build a pretty nice life for myself, and,
totally. And were you coaching? Because you started coaching.
You
were already coaching, and you were coaching with Emily, or
I was coaching with Emily at Emily Cross over at what was Emily? What's Emily's
Emily Whistle name? Now, but
Whistle, yeah. I don't know her former last name or maiden name.
I think you're right. Oh. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry.
Anyway. Sorry, number 2. So I was coaching for her because I had done a bunch of coaching back in Edmonton.
And that was with what was her business again?
Escape Adventures,
right?
Yeah, and then and she was running that through John Henry Bikes, which is where all of you guys were working, and later on stuff. So anyways, was coaching with her and living out here, and that wasn't paying the bills clearly. So nor was the flow show.
Yeah.
And yeah, started working as a carpenter and took that on and really fell into it. And yeah,
Yeah.
now it's what I do because I'm a washed up old man.
Yeah, but it's cool now. Now it must be pretty crazy to see some of these kids that you were working with, like what they've come out to, and actually
Oh,
another really interesting story. Brett Riel, one of my mechanics here, he
yep.
actually was coached by you at Escape Adventures way back when, because his aunt and uncle or grandparents or something live in North Van.
Yeah.
And in Deep Cove. And so anyway, we were chatting the other day, and then he saw my Escape Adventures, all my old stickers that I have in my
Yeah.
toolbox, and he was like, "Oh, no way, blah blah blah." So then it all came out. So another little
Wild.
tie in.
Wild,
But
man.
you've had all
Wild.
sorts of kind of cool personalities come through that program,
Oh, for
and
sure.
what's that
Like,
been like?
that's been wild, like it's been super cool just running into the likes of like Jackson Goldstone, who's just like the superhero on a bike these days to everyone. And he's still same old Jackson, he's just
Yeah,
like, when I saw him, I was like, Jackson, and he screamed Baker like 3 times louder than I screamed, and he jumped and gave me a huge hug and just about popped my head off. He's so strong these days.
yeah,
Yeah, super sick. But yeah, and like the Moselle brothers,
yep,
and Drew and
yep.
Johnny.
I remember
John.
you coaching those guys. Yeah,
Yeah, and I always said they were like the politest kids, like especially Drew. And Johnny was crazy, and I always said Drew's going to be a racer, Johnny's going to be a free rider.
yeah,
And they both went race style, but Johnny's a loose cannon. It's awesome. He's so exciting to watch ride now.
yeah,
So
totally.
exciting. Yeah, and like, yeah, it's been wild. And then I found out last summer, actually, I was riding with Macduff, Matt Macduff, up
Yep,
at Silver Star, and we were riding with Barrett Braden Hayes,
yep,
and he was like, we were taking the chair up, and he tells me, because I knew who he was, but
yeah.
and he's like, yeah, I actually saw you riding in the flow show in Markham, Ontario in like 2008. And I was like, no way. He's like, yeah. He's like, and I was one of the kids standing around asking for your autograph afterwards. And I said to you that I really wanted to get into dirt jumping and stuff, but there was no jumps around. Like, if I could get some advice. And apparently I just like stopped signing some kid's hat, looked him dead in the eyes, and I said, buy a fucking shovel and build them, man. Because he was like 17 at the time. And apparently he went out that day and bought a shovel and a rake and stuff and started building jumps.
Well, crazy, eh?
Yeah, and now he's like, he builds all over the place, and he's
Yeah,
got like a compound, or had his compound at his parents' place.
yeah.
Yeah,
Super
it's pretty wild.
accomplished.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, which is crazy. And it's crazy to see what McDuff's doing out here. Now I know he was living with you for a while, and now he's out in this neck of the woods building his big air compound, and hoping to chat
Totally.
with him in a little bit up here.
And he's another funny one. I took him for his actual first mountain bike ride, because like when we met, he was only riding hard, like fully rigid,
brakeless
26
hardtails,
inch
and yeah,
brakeless hardtails, like in the streets of Toronto and stuff. He was like
yeah,
18 maybe. Him and his like two buddies drove across the country to make it to Crankworks, because Macduff was sponsored by Race Face
yeah,
back in the Julian Coffee days. Shout
yeah.
out. Yeah, Julian got a bunch of us started with our like pro careers and sponsorship, if you will. And yeah, Macduff was staying at the Race Face house just like I was up at Crankworks, and Julian set it up that the team got to go up to top of the world before top of the world was open to the public, kind of thing, like 2 years prior, and did a lap on it. It was super sick, and it was his first time riding a full suspension bike with brakes, and he just went bonkers. It was awesome. Yeah, he wiped out a whole bunch, just like, I think I can ride off this.
Like, yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty standard for like pretty par for the course for
totally. And it's awesome to see not much has changed. He just doesn't wipe out as often. He just still looks at things and like, I think I can throw myself off that, and he doesn't. I'm just like, dude.
Yeah, and it's cool to see, like, for him, there's a lot of athletes that are dealing with that too, just the work ethic that it takes to make it happen, like how much effort he's putting into building his compound, to working to paying the bills. Like, he's not sitting there on huge paychecks from anyone, and it's pretty wild to see the effort that he's put into it.
Oh man, he has put everything into it. Like
Yeah.
like you said, he was living in my basement suite for a little bit before he bought his place. And I literally watched him like create this dream on paper, and we would talk after I was done work about what kind of place he wanted, what it needed to have. We had a full list, and like we were looking at properties that held Jen Campbell, my girlfriend. She's I guess 12 years deep, more than a girlfriend. But
Yeah.
yeah, the boss, she was even looking online because she just loves looking at real estate and stuff like that. And like, yeah, he ended up finding this place
Cherry
some
Creek-ish
other way.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's turned out super rad.
Yeah,
Super
one of
rad.
his builders actually, or not builders, but a buddy he knows who's done a lot of building out there. This Nolan Campbell guy was just actually on his podcast.
Yeah.
That one just got released today, which is
Yeah.
Friday. And we talk a little bit about his experience learning from Matt and stuff out there too, which is pretty cool. But yeah, anyway, back to like your journey. So like you were, I mean, you've been coaching. At some point the shift kind of happened. We talked about how it started from like doing nothing but riding all the time to having to support ourselves and everything there. And you were
adulting.
Yeah, and what's kind of like been what's been the biggest change in terms of like your day-to-day life, what things have stayed the same since then?
I'm always thinking about biking still. That's never changed. Like regardless of how hungry I am to go for a ride, I'm always thinking about riding, and I'm always, like driving down the road. I'm still like my mind's still running like a little kid's, like looking at things and being like, oh, that's a double, and just craziness. And yeah, I don't know, man. I love riding bikes still. I still think I'm gnarly, but I probably am like half the rider I once thought I was, and I was only half the rider I ever thought I was,
Yeah, double the size of half the rider.
Yeah. So, yeah. Don't ride a lot of skinnies anymore. Just simply because they're not around, and
totally.
They're not around, and I always threaten Jerry Willows that I'm going to build some on his trail one day, but I don't know.
It's funny to see how things change, right? Like that's, I mean, I think a cool thing or a crazy thing or a shitty thing, depending on your opinion, is like how things come in and out of fashion in riding. And like right now, obviously it's crazy. Like we're in this huge, like machine built flow, state. And it's like, that seems to be all anybody wants to ride. And it's like, I'm constantly trying to search out, technical stuff and steeper things. And it's just weird to see what's changed.
Totally, man. Totally. There's like, you can kind of tell who started riding when.
Totally.
Based on what they like to ride. And I mean, you've been around the block for a while now, like 20 years riding a bike.
Yeah.
I started like BMXing, like I said, and teammates with Richie Schley when I was like 6, and world champs and all that stuff, BMX, and then got into mountain biking and like transferred all those skills over to mountain biking, jumping and stuff, and then moved to the shore and started discovering trails and steep, and like Bowen Island was one of my first rides. And like my first ride, I crashed riding Ryan Hayes's loaned me bike. And I crashed and broke my thumb and had to finish the ride.
I remember that.
Because it was like a 2-hour hike up to the peak of Bowen Island with danger on like the gnarliest trail. And I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I was honestly scared I was going to get left in the woods.
Some of the worst crashes of your life happened on Bowen, eh? Because you got the diving board ones, the hematoma.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The Cyanagi drop as danger renamed it.
That was still like freaking one of my, as much as it sucked for you, it was one of my favorite moments in all of mountain biking. Was that day.
You went from being like, you literally went, I think the day before you were riding with your knee pads on top of your jeans, and then you showed up that day and they were under your jeans and you started riding a bike properly.
Yeah, when it was just like rad. That was like one of the first stunts that I'd ever guinea pigged in my life. And like actually guinea pigged. The danger was like, oh, it's not ready yet. And I just remember standing at the end of it and being like, it's ready, man. Like I can see it. I see exactly what's going to happen. I know what I'm going to do. And then translating that to actually doing it was like, fuck, that was sick.
And the funniest part now looking back, and this is like what, 17 years ago?
Yeah.
Is I remember standing on that same bridge and like us shuffling past each other and me standing at the edge and looking, being like, I don't see it at all, but like, whatever. Like, this thing's a piece of crap, but if Dave's going to do it, like,
Yeah,
obviously I'll do it and I'll be fine because
because
Dave's
Dave,
fucking Dave.
loose
And
cannon, Stunny
I'm a
D.
pro rider now. Like, I'm
Yeah,
a pro rider. Of course, I'm going to be able to do it if someone else can.
yeah.
Was my mentality. And yeah, you did it. And then Mike did it. And then I went off of it. And you guys all said, like, the moment I got on the bridge, my body positioning changed. And like,
Oh, dude,
everything.
it literally looked like if you could go back to that crash that we were talking about me earlier on the skinny to like, you know, riding off that thing, not having any clue what I was doing. It literally looked like it was the first time I'd ever watched you drop off anything. You went from like, good, you hit the bridge and it was just like, who the hell is that? And then it just went wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a gnarly one. That was like, what was my injury? I don't
The
think I broke any.
hematoma.
Yeah,
No,
I
that
didn't
was
break
like
any
the
ribs or anything, but I broke my, I busted my testicle.
testicle.
And
Yeah, you were pretty black
yeah,
for a while down there.
yeah, yeah. Had the big old hematoma, which I still have, like a big like scar tissue lump on that side from body checking that tree at like
Yeah,
60, 70K.
yeah, yeah. That was
Yeah,
crazy.
that was gnarly. And
Yeah,
then like, and thinking back to it, we were roommates and me being like, no, I'm not going to the hospital.
yeah,
I'm fine.
exactly.
I'm not going to the hospital. Like 5 days later, I remember you, me, and Grant going to Raglan's for dinner because I was like, okay, after dinner, you guys could drop me off at the hospital because I just need a good meal and then I'll be there for like days. I figured.
Yeah,
And
something's wrong.
yeah, I was like, I'm dying for sure. They're gonna
Yeah,
put me down. And yeah, I went to the hospital and they were just like ultrasound and they were like, oh, you did a number on yourself. Just you need rest and ice and there's not much we can do for you. You've been injured for 5 days. The
yeah, all the
body's done
things that
what
we
it's
should have
done.
known better to do. And then you
Yeah.
had the big digger in the flow show. Well, you also had the other one on Bowen where you came off the skinny and crashed on your head. That one is on YouTube, I think.
Yeah, that one's on YouTube. Look it up. Andrew Baker head slam.
Yeah, that one's a good
Turn the
one. And then you
volume
had the
up.
flow show one almost taking your
Yeah.
eye out.
Yeah, the flow show one where I missed the transition that was like 6 inches wide.
Yeah,
And the downhill one with the front tire and just like kissed the asphalt and Medicine Hat.
yeah.
Like, yeah, that's ripped my face wide open. And yeah, had 5 stitches in my face for about 20 minutes. And then I cut 3 of them out before I left the hospital.
And like when you've what's your program? Obviously now, if anyone's going to mountain bike for 10, 20 years, whatever, you're going to come back from those things.
Yeah.
What's your program? What's been the hardest part mentally to come back from injury to like, for you to feel like getting back on the horse or to like go back and do you like going back to a place that you've eaten it and like trying to stick it clean? Do you like want to stay away from those spots? Like what's your kind of like program?
I definitely don't avoid them. That's for
Yeah.
sure. But going back makes me nervous.
Yeah.
The big one on Bowen, like not the Cyanagi drop.
Yep.
I've never gone back to that spot actually.
Yeah.
I would go back though for sure because guys are riding it last year.
Yeah.
I just haven't made it back to do it. I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should do that this year. It's on the
Sweet, let's make a
checklist.
trip.
Yeah. We'll take Danger because he's not over there anymore either.
Yeah, that'd be rad.
But yeah, I've gone back and like the head drop one that's on YouTube. Before I left that day, I got up once I caught my breath and stuff. I grabbed my bike and I went and I did it again before I left because I knew I was going to be getting on a plane to head back to Edmonton because I was still technically living in Edmonton at that point. And yeah, that one I broke 3 ribs and like shattered my helmet because I kicked it in the back with my own feet, like scorpion style.
Yeah, it was a proper scorp on that.
Yeah, that one was gnarly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's just such an interesting journey to see how people come back from injury and like how you manage and what you do. Like it's especially when you're trying to balance like regular Joe life. Like, you know, you were kind of in a different position than you were somewhat, you know, pro, but you're still not making your living from mountain biking. So it's like you got to pay bills. So now you're trying to balance like I got to go to work tomorrow. I got this drive to like hit this thing, to do this stunt, to do whatever. Balancing that risk of injury, which I feel like for the first bunch of years we lived in North Van, like I just didn't even consider. Like I just was like, I remember going into work and being like having people, like customers, lift the bikes into the stand because my shoulders all separated, like, trying to just figure it out.
Like, I remember having like absolutely zero fucks given about what would happen if I got injured.
Yeah.
I only cared about like, if I got injured, how fast can I heal and how fast can I get back on my bike and back to working full able-bodied,
Yeah.
I've had a lot of crashes and a lot of broken bones, like into the 50s for broken bones.
Yeah.
And like with all my hands and stuff, like
Yeah.
I've got no knuckles left on my M5, like the old boxer fracture they call
Yeah.
it. But that's it should be renamed the mountain biker fracture, because
Totally.
you just smash your fist off the side of a tree, and like I've broken each one of them like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
My arm a few times, my leg in 3 spots through the tib and the fib at once, and like
Yeah.
all sorts of stupid shit over the years. And it's always just been like, rest, lots of hydration. Diet's a big one when you get injured. I cut all like sugars out. I go raw vegetables and like super clean diet, water, blah blah blah. And
I remember watching you heal on a diet of beer and pot. And,
yeah, I mean, nowadays I do that. Like,
yeah.
Since I turned like 28 or so, I started healing smarter.
Yeah.
Back then, I didn't really give 2 shits because I was like, I'll never be stopped. I'm invincible.
Yeah, I was like coming back from my busted hand on Baseline Mountain, and my rehab consisted of you and LJ making me open every beer, put in every new riding DVD, and roll every joint with my busted hand. Which was funny. But like that, it brings me
do it
exactly. It brings me to like a point that I'm interested to hear what your opinion is around like. So I have my own opinions, as everyone that's going to listen to this podcast is going to know, around the state of mountain biking, where we're at, and good and bad and everything else. And like there was a time for me where I feel like mountain biking, like when I started, one of the things I loved was not being able to ride a trail first time. I walked significantly more than I rode for a long time, behind you and LJ, then behind Grant and Jeff. I crashed a ton. I had to come back from injury. I had to learn slowly, but there was a feeling around riding a trail more difficult than I could, getting off and walking where I needed to without feeling ashamed of it. And then just knowing that I was going to come back one day and hit it and do it. Like, what's your feeling on kind of where we're at now? Do you still see that attitude in young riders? Like, I don't feel I do, but I don't know if it's just me being jaded. Like, I just feel like there's a little bit of a push sometimes to just make it too easy or too risk adverse, and I don't want it to all be risk heavy, because I appreciate we need to have a different demographic of rider in that want to just ride for the cruisy fun, which is also a blast, and so but I think that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like we could definitely do a better job of including both sets of those, like these trails that are hard and take some time to learn, and like crashes happen, and
hashtag dumbing down the shore, right? Everything goes from being gnarly once upon a time to like being flowed out and everything. And I mean, it's good for the longevity of a trail. It's good for longevity of the sport. All of that. But that is not, in my opinion, what was rad about mountain biking. What was rad was riding trails that were like unknown. Or just like unridden, because not many people could ride them. And walking sections of a trail, dude, I never gave up on doing that.
Totally.
If I don't walk a section of a trail, or like a trail per day or week that I'm riding, I wasn't riding hard. Like, that's the bottom line. And I'm 41. I still want to ride hard, because there's nothing better than like, it wasn't a good ride until you feel like you almost crapped yourself a couple of times because you were so fucking scared that you were going to go OTB and drop for 40 feet because what you're riding is steep and chundery. And it's like, I'm like, the idea of leaving the shore terrifies me, because I just know that there's nothing out there that's quite as steep and gnarly as what we have here in abundance.
Trust me, man. Like, I know I missed that a lot, obviously. And you see what I'm like, the projects I work on out here in terms of building in Kamloops, and the trails I like to ride out here are definitely in the, kind of the minority of what's being ridden for the most part. And then even when I come back to the shore, right, it's like, where do I want to go and what do I want to ride? And what do I see?
Yeah.
Which is rad. It's just interesting to me to like, because I think the other piece that gets lost in that is people start saying like, oh, all you want it to be is like, you're elitist or you're gatekeeping and you want it to be this difficult thing. And I'm like, but what you're
No.
missing is the pride and the sense of accomplishment that comes from riding and walking and looking and doing the mental work and standing at the top of these sections again and again and again and envisioning until, like I said, with that drop on Bowen, where all of a sudden one day it's like you can see it, like
It just clicks.
what you're going to do. And that also doesn't mean that you're going to ride that section every time you go ride that trail. It might mean that very next time you go back and walk it. It might mean that, which is, I think,
totally,
there's
or
that
it might
piece
mean
of
that
mountain
you
biking.
only it might mean that you only ever do it one time.
Yeah, totally.
Like there's plenty of stunts and lines that I've only done one time.
Yeah, 100%.
And it was like, that was enough. I did it. I proved to myself I got that.
Yeah.
I don't need to do it again. I'm not Steve Vanderhook who says every time he does that one line of his that it's the last time.
Yeah.
And then he goes back and does it again. Like,
yeah, I mean, that guy's an animal though, right? Like
I was chatting with him this morning. The guy's gold. He's like, he's the perfect mix of old school and new school.
Well, I mean, he was around old school, right? You watch the old videos. He was in the scene when before he went and did the fireman thing. Before he did that, he was already, doing road gaps up on Frome, and
he's a former flow show rider too. Man.
Yeah, he was part of that scene, right? And like I remember talking trail building with him, and because there was a time where we had very similar styles in terms of what kind of rock roll, which now is everywhere. Like now that is like the thing, right? But there was a time when it was like we were like looking at those lines in a way that was like. It wasn't even new. It was just taking like these old pieces of trail and then extending them and being like, man, this rock roll doesn't have to just be that part of the slab. It can be like this whole thing can be done, which is pretty cool. But then I remember also looking at some of his stuff on video since I moved away and being like, oh, when I go back, I'm going to tag that off and he'll tell me where it is. And then I get there. I'm like, yeah, screw that noise. Like, not doing that.
Like the first time I saw that busted axe wound line, I was with you.
Yeah. Totally.
And
that was true. We went up there. I was still living there at that point, right?
And I called him from there. And I was just like, dude, what the fuck, man? Like, okay, don't do this too often. Like, I love you as a friend, man. I don't want to go to your funeral yet. And he was just like, no, I got it. I'm like, I know you do, but it's like, dude,
it's gnarly, dude. Like the lift up in the middle is sketchy. Like you can't really comprehend without being there. He's done a good job of filming it and showing like the exposure on the left-hand side. Until you're standing there, it's wild.
Yeah.
Which I think is the other funny big thing that you learn about watching videos and stuff for so long is I can't even tell you how many times now I feel like I've got a decent idea of like when I see something on video, like actually how big it is. But I remember for years, it was like, you'd look at things, you're like, oh, no problem. I'm going to roll up there and tag her off. Like that's tiny. And then you realize it's because the guys doing it are so good that they make it look very easy. And you get there and you're like, whoa. Because that was still one of the only things that like I never tagged off on the shore that I always wanted to was the toonie drop. Like I never. And there was a few years in the middle there when I was riding a lot, right? After you had moved to Squamish that I was riding a ton. I was probably riding the best I'd ever ridden. I was, doing a lot of the building on Frome and stuff at that point, right? And I remember rolling into it, not even rolling into it, going there without my bike specifically to do the mental work to be like, I'm going to do this year. I got it. And then every time I went with my bike, just like, no, not going to happen, which is another piece I think people lose now is like, you can walk away from stuff again and again and again and not be like, oh man, I suck or not. You know what I mean? Like there is this risk reward ratio that everyone has to tag off and that there is like something to be proud about to know where you sit, because it's not even like the size of that drop. It's not even though it is a huge monster drop.
It's monster.
It would definitely be in
the fact that it's plumb.
Well, and just the way it is, it's like, and then you go up and then you look at Caleb's takeoff, which is now like up even higher and hipped off, and you're just like, what the hell?
It's not even that much higher. I think it's like 6 inches higher his takeoff, if that.
Yeah. But
the fact that he's coming down like moss and over roots, like
totally
within a bike length of the lip is just bonkers.
Yeah.
To like a 35, 40-foot drop to sniper between goalposts, like.
And he's hipping even further, right?
Yeah, like way further. Further.
How long have we been chatting? We can't have been chatting that long already, eh?
I don't know.
I feel like I just got like a 10-minute warning, but I don't feel like we've been talking that long. But maybe we have been.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, well, let's figure out these last 10 minutes here. And if we
Yeah.
have been chatting that long, I guess 147. Yeah, I guess we have been talking for,
Wow.
yeah, 30
Crazy.
minutes already.
Yeah.
So we maybe have to do a part 3 eventually.
Maybe.
But it's cool
Who knows?
this time to start talking about some of the like, where we think mountain biking is. Because the other side of that, I don't want to also be like this negative Nancy old,
No,
dude. Like it's cool to see new people getting into it. It's cool to see. I just don't want that piece to be lost. Because the piece that actually gave me the most pride in myself and the most agency and the most belief in myself was those pieces that were like really hard to work for. And I think that like it's just something that we have to be that's cool, because this brings us into the idea of road trail building and trail organizations that are essential to pushing the sport and to growing things and to whatnot. But it's hard to have everything pigeonholed into like what anyone tells you mountain biking should be, or what
Well, for sure, man. And I think what we need to do is make sure people know, like, just like everything in this world, like history will repeat itself, but we need to make sure people know about the history.
Yeah, totally.
And like people need to know Digger was once a criminal for building trails.
Yeah, go watch
was
Cease and Desist.
Wanted by like the RCMP and stuff for building trails around here. And now we've got mountain like trails at or picnic tables at trailheads with plaques mounted to them in honor of him and all of his work contributed to the community. You know, it's like he was once a criminal and now he's like this like esteemed member of society. And it's like, he's like, I mean, all the love to Digger and stuff, but he's still just the dirtbag that pressured me into doing stupid shit on my bike for camera.
But and like that's the thing though. It's also really cool with someone like Digger is like, he didn't totally know what he was doing right from day one, but he learned and he put the time in, and also to learn his terrain to make sure trails were as unintrusive as possible. He was, putting ferns back onto the edges of trails from day one. Like there's all these things for kids to learn. And I do want to go back to what you were saying to Braden Barrett. Hey, right? Get a shovel, go out and build it. Just learn how to do it properly. So if you have to go out to your community trail days, go out to like your North Shore, your association trail days, learn the techniques, and then find a mountain in the middle of nowhere that no one's building on, and like do what you want to do, and like
man,
make it happen.
I'm not saying use power tools or hand tools because that would be illegal.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm saying go stomp a trail in. One of my favorite things I did when I lived in Squamish with my then teammate with Polygon bikes and Banshee prior to that was Kevin Landry.
Yeah,
we would go out. We would like literally rake in a line in the morning, just walk down a section of the mountain and just kind of like kick branches out of the way and stomp a line in so we could see where we were supposed to go. And by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we'd be up there with our bikes dropping in to a brand new trail. And we would just like, we literally had rake and ride number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 at one point. It was, it was awesome. Awesome.
And that's like part of what's needed, right? Like there is enough.
And I'm not saying I don't like, I bet you I've done almost as many A-line laps as anyone out there.
Totally. Yeah.
Like I ride A-line and dirt merchant all day, every day when I'm in the park,
Yeah.
I do not ride tech in the park because why would I bother? I live on the shore. I'm there for jumps. Thank you.
Yeah.
And like it's been that way for almost 20 years for me with up there. Yeah, man. I don't know.
It's just cool to just see like what things are doing and where people are going. And I don't think you're ever going to lose that spirit that started in mountain biking with like you just kind of want to do your own thing and you want to spend time in the woods and you want to go do that stuff. And I just think that there's lots of cool avenues out there. So if you're young and you're listening and you want to get into that stuff, like ask at your bike shop, like one of your owners, one of your mechanics knows something somewhere and could use a hand. Putting like tools in the earth to help the people that are helping you build your scene is never going to be a bad thing. And, it's something that like people need to still do. And that's the only way that you're going to be able to create like what you want to ride. You know what I mean?
Man. And honestly, some of the best times ever were out in the woods without my bike.
Totally.
A shovel, a backpack with some beers and a couple of sandwiches in it,
Yeah,
and
totally.
just like some tunes playing and we just build.
Yeah,
like
100%. Yeah.
So many good times doing that over the years.
Yeah,
Love doing that.
It's a pretty good experience. But I mean, Anything else that you're like really? We got 5 minutes left. Anything else that you're really like? What's yeah? Anything else you got on your chest? You want to get off? What's your platform to all at this point 115 viewers?
So
Thanks to everyone who did watch, by the way, and
I'm gonna get a couple of things out there and get like one thing cleared up.
Yeah.
The bicycle hub didn't close. Dave was fired because he was a quilter.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
No, man.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. Crazy. Yeah. So for anyone who's listening new, I owned a bike shop in North Van, service only for 8, 9 years, whatever, called the Bicycle Hub. It was rad. It's where I had
still your Instagram tag.
It's still my Instagram tag. It's where I had the most incredible moments of my life. It's actually probably the biggest portion of my life. But yeah, anyway, we can talk about that later. And it's where I learned a lot of the wrenching stuff that I
man. It was the first bike shop that I built.
Yeah.
I was there with you when you looked at the property. I was there when you accepted the keys and we started ripping the place apart because I was the construction guy. And like one of my first dates, like, because I mean, you opened that right as I met Jen. Yeah. And like, we were like 2-3 months in, and like one of our dates was her helping me varnish all the baseboards and casings and stuff that I had created out of OSB board for the shop for that look, right? And like, it's wild. That was the first bike shop I built out, and then the second being for Grant at 4 Bike just last year out in Nanaimo, and which looks incredible, by the way. And those guys have been crushing it. Like, again, it's really cool to see this like resurgence of people that have been in it for a long time. Just being like, there is career opportunities here. We've worked very hard at doing it and creating it, and they're doing rad, which is awesome. It was. I mean, it was a really special place. Like, really special place for a lot of people. For me, for the racing team, for you, for Adriano, for Luke, for Stoyan, for like a big community of people. Yeah, man. That just hung out there. It was like this crazy barber shop, right? It's like I'm always working, and people would just be coming in and out and wanting to chat and it was rad. So I mean, one day we'll dig into all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's been so cool to come back to district and be able to do the same thing and now be on the front lines owning a bike shop again, and a little bit different, but keeping it going. Totally, man. It's been really cool for me to watch my friends, like, like I was the pro rider of the group, and like all you guys were working in the bike industry, but I was the construction guy. So like we'd go out party all night after riding all weekend. And like I would be up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work and put my boots on and get my ass to work and get yelled at and stuff. And you guys would go to the bike shops where it was warm and cozy, and I was outside freeze my ass off. And like, now I'm out of the bike industry basically, other than my other half being who she is as a sales rep in the bike world, and my best friend's owning bike shops. I don't have a lot of ties to the bike world besides it's my whole life. Exactly. I've stepped away or whatever, gotten just old and washed up and don't matter anymore. So it's but that's the coolest lesson, is that it can still be your whole life, right? And we all find ways to do that in a different way, and that's rad. Totally, man. And there were times in my 20s and early 30s where like biking felt like a chore sometimes, because it was my job, and I didn't want to be out there on my bike, and I didn't want to do stuff. And now I'm just like, I love riding my bike almost every time I ride my bike, but I still have those days because some weeks I get to ride 6 days in a row, and day number 4 sucks. Yeah, totally, man. All right, well, we got to sign this off. We're going to get cut off here right away. Thank you, Lil Baker, for being guest 1 and 2. Thank you for getting me into the whole thing. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll be back next week. If you have any questions, if you want to hear us talk about anything else, hit us up in the comments. And failing that, we'll see you for the next episode of From the Mechanics Bench. Much love. See you, buddy. You guys.